After all the toy videos from Ollie's, documenting the failing toys, it looks like Hasbro, the producers of that mountain of trash, are getting out of the toy game. Getting out of the toy game? What the?
The following is a World-Class Bullshitters exclusive.
Hell finally froze over. Hasbro is getting out of the toy game. To a certain degree. The billion-dollar company that needs to crowdfund action figures from the biggest franchises in history has decided it's time to throw in the towel, according to a report. The report details the exit strategy of Hasbro from the toy game to some degree, and what their plans are for the foreseeable future outside of Ollie's. You know what? Let's take a look at the report, shall we? This thing is a doozy, and is the first major domino to fall in collector culture. But before we do, hit that thumbs up button to let YouTube know that you enjoy this content. Hit subscribe with the bell notification turned on so you don't miss any world-class episodes. And finally, folks, get ready, because Stealing Solo 2 is on its way to you. Hasbro is undergoing a huge shift at the moment, and while it started in 2024, we'll be seeing that shift happen this year in 2025. Chris Cox, and yes, that's his name, spelled just like the chicken, Hasbro's CEO, used to work for Microsoft, and he's been diverting assets to video game development and publishing. All while some major Hasbro toy brands will no longer be manufactured by Hasbro, but instead will be produced under license by other companies. According to this report, Hasbro has been wanting to diversify from being a toy manufacturer for a long time. Brian Goldner, former CEO of Hasbro's mission was to turn Hasbro from a toy company into an IP company, often citing Disney as inspiration. It was under him that the Bayverse was at an all-time high and that other brands like G.I. Joe became live-action movie franchises. However, the time for Hasbro's involvement in making films has passed, just like Goldner himself. They have since sold their production assets and will no longer be financing Hasbro-related projects with Paramount or other studios. This big shift is happening under the new CEO, Chris Cox, who comes from Microsoft. He said in 2024 that he sees gaming as the largest potential source of growth for the company. Toys are simply not selling as well as before in general, and the future is in digital play. It's there he feels the company can reach a more mature market, and that they're so sure of this that he has bet $1 billion of Hasbro's money on game development. The first games resulting from this investment will be released either later this year or in 2026. What's important here is Hasbro's involvement in the games. They aren't games using a license from Hasbro, but games that Hasbro will be directly involved with in financing. The restructuring of the company has had some massive repercussions in toy development. As we saw last year, there were massive layoffs all over Hasbro. Teams are now leaner. The biggest change was with the Power Ranger brand, where Hasbro will no longer be making the toys themselves. Instead, they'll be licensing the production out to Playmates. They'll be handling all the figures we see on shelves and Zords and everything to do with the brand, toy-wise. With Power Rangers, Hasbro is using Playmates just as Disney uses Hasbro for Star Wars. Speaking of Star Wars, that's another area where Hasbro is growing less and less involved with toy production since they have chosen to sublease their master license. While they'll still produce certain toys, like the Black Series, this explains why we see other Star Wars toys on shelves made by different companies. This mitigates the risk of overstock, which is what we've been documenting here on the channel for a long time. And here's a fun fact from the article. Hasbro owning the master license is why Star Wars Funko Pops must all be bobbleheads, as Funko does not have the right to make Star Wars figures. Only Hasbro. Well, no matter what they make, if it's Funko, it sucks. Even with Hasbro making less, there will still be a mountain of that crap that won't sell. So don't worry, folks. The Ollie's videos aren't going away anytime soon, because this news doesn't mention Hasbro's biggest embarrassment, Marvel. However, we'll talk about that in just a moment. So less Hasbro is a good thing for collectors, since Hasbro isn't a very collector-friendly company. While better than NECA in terms of customer service and ubiquity, Hasbro's products are the definition of bare minimum. Adult collectors, the market that Hasbro is trying to chase with this new video game venture, have complained about bad distribution, reuse of parts, bad character selection, and so much more. Yet, as the biggest game in town, most collectors don't have many other options if their main collection is Star Wars, Marvel, Transformers, G.I. Joe, or Ghostbusters. Of course, other companies make Spider-Man and superhero figures, but not the ones you're finding at Target. That's when alternatives pop up, and these days, alternatives are usually better. Yes, sometimes they can be pricey, but you get what you pay for. As Hasbro's prices continue to rise, the quality plateaued about 5 years ago. Hasbro's toys have become more and more basic as time goes on. Dull plastic, no paint, bad lightness, lack of detail, it all comes to mind when I think of Hasbro toys. That's why I look elsewhere when collecting my favorite things. You do too, and Hasbro knows that. Last week, I made a video about how Hasbro allegedly wants to charge 60 big ones for a basic Spider-Man figure with a few extra accessories. In the video, I discuss how import figures that only cost about $10 to $15 more before shipping are made of better quality materials, have better details, better paint applications, and just are overall better. When creating a premium product, companies can charge more, but Hasbro is just leveraging the power of brands, and it's the same basic Spider-Man figure that's being sold for almost 3 times the price. That's the Hasbro strategy, and it's pissing off collectors who are the main consumers of toys. How bad do you think it's going to be when they jump into video games, where the audience is far more vicious? Recent analysis indicate that adults have become the primary consumer in the toy industry, surpassing preschoolers for the first time. Last year, between January and April of 2024, individuals aged 18 and over accounted for $1.5 billion in toy-related purchases, with 0.5 of that coming directly from me, overtaking the 3 to 5-year-old demographic. This shift is attributed to adults purchasing toys instead of kids. Why is that? Well, it's simple. Kids want video games and digital products. Popular items among adult collectors include trading cards, Lego sets, plush toys, action figures, and more. The press calls this trend of adults engaging with toys as kidulting, which I don't like at all, but that's the official phrase. Now, according to other research, nearly $1 billion was spent by adults and teens on toys last year in the UK alone, with classics like Care Bears and Tamagotchi coming back, making a resurgence in popularity. Additionally, pocket money toys priced under $10 have been increasing in sales, appealing to budget-conscious consumers. In our last video, I talked about how other companies are putting out toys that aren't as expensive as Hasbro figures, and they're just as good, if not better. This growing interest around adults is reshaping the toy market, leading to a revival of nostalgic products and the introduction of new items that target this demographic. Yet if you really pay close attention, the new is just quite old and in many cases not as good as the old used to be. But that doesn't matter because nostalgia is the name of the game. You walk into a Target and what brands do you see? The Simpsons, Batman the Animated Series, Street Fighter, Beetlejuice, Christopher Reeve Superman, Michael Keaton Batman, the Ghostbusters, and more. What do all these brands have in common? Yeah, they all kick ass, but they're also all over 30 years old. And yet, people are buying them. They keep making them. Why? Because that's what people buy. It's what we grew up with. It's the same reason why Hasbro has essentially stopped making Star Wars figures from the sequel trilogy. Hashtag where's Rey? Nowhere, because that chip didn't sell. But you know what's popular enough for a revival due to nostalgia? Jar Jar Binks. Yeah, that happened. That's why Hot Toys can make a $300 Jar Jar, a $440 Chewbacca from The Empire Strikes Back, and a whole lot more. You think that we're paying for Reva, Rey, Rose Tico, and all the rest of the related characters? No, we're not. That stuff goes to Ollie's for a reason. Little kids don't want these characters, and the adults don't want them either. Just take a look at what doesn't sell and ask yourself, who is this for? The last generation of toy collectors grew up on older Star Wars, Marvel, and other 90s throwbacks, and now it's time to cash in. The last time to cash in, because this market is collapsing. Now, I know I'm guilty of all this. That's why I have the retro Batman the Animated Series style figures that just dropped, or why I upgrade certain things in the collection. I am the target demographic, and that's why I buy things that come from shows that I like. Now, I'll buy stuff from new movies and shows, but most of my collection is stuff from my past that I'm constantly buying the best version of. And I know I'm not alone in this. You know it, and Hasbro knows it too. Hasbro will not lower their profit margins for these toys, so they'll just license them out and make their money elsewhere. Now, the report mentions the Power Rangers, which was my favorite as a kid. I loved those toys, and I still have all of them. But I was always happy to get new ones that looked better, and spoiler alert, Hasbro's Power Ranger toys did not. They absolutely sucked. The Zords were bad, the figures were bad, the cosplay items were underscaled and underwhelming. Hasbro milked the Power Rangers dry as fast as possible, and then licensed it out to another company. Super 7 was up next, who mostly shit the bed on their part, and now it's on to Playmates. And what are they gonna do? Recycle Power Ranger figures one last time. They think that they'll get guys my age to open up their wallets out of nostalgia, but it'll probably fail miserably. Why? Well, boutique brands exist, and they tend to do it better. I'll spare you a boring history lesson, but the Japanese Power Ranger figures that I imported 12 years ago are better than the modern Hasbro figures, and I guarantee they'll top Playmates too. We'll get the original 5 Rangers, then the green, then the white, some villains, rehashed Power Morphers, and more. Then they're on to the Zords, which will inevitably be a downgrade. When Hasbro was making the Power Ranger toys, the original stuff from 1993 was more detailed and overall a better product. Hasbro cut every corner possible. They used plastic where others used die-cast. They added detail and extra add-ons that weren't part of the original design, and they used that to charge an arm and a leg. What happened? The line died, and the remainder is at Ollie's. This is the last time these companies can milk this era of pop culture nostalgia, and it's painfully obvious. It's the California gold rush of nostalgia. Companies know that the children of this generation want games, tablets, and skibbity toilets, which they're trying to cash in on but failing miserably. Once those toilets show up at Ollie's, it's the end of the world as we know it. Well, either it's the end or we'll be stuck in an endless loop of 90s nostalgia to a point where those warm and fuzzy feelings become more and more tiresome. Hell, I'm tired of it already. If you go to a website like Big Bad Toy Store, you'll see toys for Thundercats. No, not this POS, but the original from 1985. And spoiler alert, that's 40 years ago. I know, I'm sorry, your back hurts, mine does too, but that should be a very telling sign of who buys what. You'll also find toys based on Rob Liefeld designs, 1950s Godzilla, more Street Fighter II figures, and an $800 Rogue statue. Why is it $800? How can they charge that much? Because she's in her Jim Lee costume, or simply put, her animated series appearance. Why does X-Men 97 exist? It creates justification to resell nostalgia and action figures to that generation. We're the last generation of collectors. Yes, we grew up with video games, but we didn't live in an always online connected society. Values, priorities, they have changed in the modern world. We're the remnants of the past. We're getting a cycle of repeat toys, and I'm getting a little tired of it. Hasbro knows the jig is up and it's time to pay the piper. Nostalgia has been Stretch Armstrong to its limit and it can't recover anymore. That's why Hasbro is getting out of the toy game and onto more binary pastures. By the way, that was a coding joke, not a trans thing. This is about Transformers, not... Yeah, now hell, screw it, you get it. Now, getting serious for a moment, Hasbro wants to get into gaming, but it's not going to be in their best interest long term. Thankfully for them, Ollie's doesn't sell video games, so they'll be able to hide this embarrassment at GameStop, which will be dead soon as well. In today's rapidly evolving business environment, companies often feel compelled to chase down the latest market trends to remain relevant, and Hasbro is definitely doing that by trying to enter the video game field. However, chasing this particular trend won't yield the benefits that Hasbro hopes for because gaming is a crowded and cutthroat industry that is, well, dying in its own way. Moreover, the assumption that Hasbro's vast financial resources, that $1 billion we talked about earlier, will guarantee success overlooks all of the other pitfalls that face video game companies with even more money than Hasbro. Those companies crowd the industry. Large publishers like EA, Activision, Blizzard, Ubisoft, and Take-Two Interactive already own most of the market, and a lot of their games are trash. Hasbro makes toys and board games, and they don't really have the internal expertise to make these types of games. They're chasing video games because they're lucrative, but they risk destroying Hasbro's brand. They've already cannibalized their workforce, so what are they going to do? Hire a bunch of game developers only to make nothing that sells and fire them too? That's not going to be a good look for Hasbro. The idea that Hasbro's deep pockets will guarantee success is as ridiculous as the Shuricopter. Tons of high-profile companies with vast financial resources have tried to enter the gaming market, only to exit with nothing to show for it. For instance, Google launched its Stadia platform with a lot of money, only to shut down a short time later. Amazon too invested millions in its gaming division, enduring multiple game cancellations. Google and Amazon have much more money than Hasbro, so why does Hasbro think this will be any different? These two examples prove that possessing a ton of capital is not a safeguard in making video games. A Hasbro video game will be like a Hasbro toy, overpriced, underwhelming, and lacking in most departments. Add in the fact that when considering Hasbro's current catalog, many of its most popular IPs are licensed through other companies. Marvel, Star Wars, and other iconic properties that drive much of Hasbro's toy sales are largely locked into multi-year deals with other, more established video game publishers. Simply put, Hasbro cannot turn on its Marvel game pipeline if the gaming rights are already owned by other companies. This presents a significant problem for Hasbro, because the major advantage they have is that they hold a ton of IPs. Without direct access to these beloved properties for games, Hasbro risks spending a ton of money on nothing. How many Monopoly games are breaking records? What about the last G.I. Joe game? Anyone lining up for Transformers on Xbox? You already know the answer. From a strategic standpoint, chasing video game trends puts Hasbro in a bad position. The company's efforts will come across as hollow, and gamers can smell that BS a mile away. Just look at their trading card division. Gamers know when a product is created out of passion, and they also know when it's turned out by a crappy corporation jumping in on a trend. A mere coat of digital paint over Hasbro's crappy sculpts will not yield good results. Any attempt to enter this market would require Hasbro to build or acquire, which they'll probably do, the necessary infrastructure. Even if Hasbro partners with an established studio to handle these aspects, they'll screw it up because they want the quickest and easiest buck possible. They gotta make that billion back for the stockholders. While the video game market may be an appealing target for Hasbro, it's far from a guaranteed road to success. Gaming is hyper-competitive. Having billions of dollars in the bank doesn't guarantee that a foray into gaming will prove fruitful, as evidenced by multiple high-profile failures in recent years. Concord, anyone? Hasbro's bid to chase the video game trend will result in more pitfalls than payoffs. And well, this is the landscape they created for themselves. Simply put, it couldn't happen to a nicer company. And here's a recent example of this already. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have reached an agreement license on Dungeons & Dragons to internet gambling companies Games Global for the creation of gambling games featuring Dungeons & Dragons. The first release under this license will be Dungeons & Dragons Tales of Riches from Neon Valley Studios in Q1 of 2025. Additional games are also planned as part of a collaboration. This is awesome. The very first game you're getting is a gambling game. I can't wait to play Monopoly for real money, said no one ever. It seems like Hasbro is in its Chris Games phase. That was just a footnote on music history, and Hasbro's foray into video games might just be a footnote in history too. Or it could be the end for them. Either way, I'll be documenting it here on the channel and laughing all the way. So folks, what do you think of this? Hasbro isn't going to make toys anymore and they're going to do video games. I think it's stupid. I understand that gaming is big, but not everybody should make video games. Should Kraft Foods make video games? No. Some of these companies tried it in the past, but there was this little thing called the video game crash in 1983, and that's when everybody and their aunt was trying to get into gaming. This person, Alpo, they made games. Everybody made games, and guess what? It shit the bed. Hell, even Steven Spielberg himself, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, they forced E.T. the video game on the masses, and it's the worst game ever made, and it populates a landfill. Will Hasbro's games populate landfills? Their toys will, but their games probably won't because it'll be mostly a digital platform. But it's going to save them money, so instead of losing $5 billion, they'll only lose $3 billion because they didn't have to produce any physical products. And I think that's what companies are really going for at the end of the day. They don't want to have to make anything physical, they want you to only want digital products, and I do not want digital-only products. There's never a world where I want a digital Han Solo action figure, or a digital Batmobile, or a digital Inspector Gadget. No, I'll take physical stuff all day long. That's why Hasbro's trying to sell you robots of Transformers that actually transform. You know, buying a $50 Optimus Prime isn't enough. They need you to buy an $800 Optimus Prime, a $1,200 Megatron, and a $1,500 Grimlock. Okay, maybe that last one was a little excessive on the exaggeration, but you get my point. They're trying to sell it to everybody, and it's not working. Why? Because we're all burnt out. Not because we're tapped out financially, we're burned out from their garbage. So folks, let me know what you think about this. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below. Be on the lookout for Stealing Solo 2. We're going to make that huge. We're going to make it bigger than the first one, and you guys can help make that happen. So folks, make sure you keep WCBS subscribed with your bell notification turned on to all so you don't miss anything, and get involved with the community. Join us on Facebook, X, Rumble, Instagram, and if you want to see what I draw, well, I'm the Jeff Hicks on Instagram. Though I haven't updated in about a year, but if I get one more follower, I'll start doing that regularly. So folks, I'll be back next time with more. In the meantime, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.